Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My dear brothers and sisters. Inshallah, today we are going to be discussing Hagia Sophia converting or reverting into mosque, right or wrong. Subhanallah, since last 2 days, this has been a subject of discussion between many sections of the society. What has happened is Hagia Sophia, a structure, a monument, which was museum until recently, on the 10th of July 2020, it was declared in Turkey that it is going to be now reverted back to a mosque as it was previously. Now this subject has become a subject of deep discussion, analysis from various communities, groups and individuals. There has been statements made by head of various states. There has been statements given by various religious groups and including groups such as UNESCO and other secular organizations. Now what we want to do today is have a quick discussion on various historical aspects, religious perspectives and the implications in our times, that is the 21st century, of the reversion of the museum into the mosque. So we'll start quickly or firstly with certain historical facts and dates in relation to Hagia Sophia, the structure. If we start to go back from the recent past, until 10th of July 2020, it was considered a museum. When did it become museum? It happened in the year 1934, after the fall of Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Caliphate. The new government in Turkey and the leader Ataturk, he put a ban through the judiciary system of Turkey and through the parliament of Turkey, where he declared that the existing structure, Hagia Sophia, which was a existing mosque, which was a mosque in practice, he declared that in 1934, probably on 29th of May or certain date around that, he declared that from now on, there will be a ban on the prayer on the mosque and it will be converted into a museum. Before that, if we go right from the beginning as to what was this structure all about and why the whole controversy is coming into place, is let's look at the historical perspective. In the year 537, from 532 to 537, Justinian I, who was the king or the ruler of Constantinople of that time, of the Byzantine Empire, he constructed this structure which was titled or called Hagia Sophia. In other words, it's called the Church of Divine Wisdom. And there are various other titles given to this church. And this happened to be one of the biggest and the largest church in the entire world from that time onwards. From 537 up until 1453, for almost a span of more than 9 centuries, it was a church. And in 1453, when Sultan Mohammed, the Ottoman ruler, when he conquered Constantinople, when he defeated the Byzantine Empire, when he was able to win over the army that was defending Constantinople, the city of Constantinople or the area of Constantinople, he was victorious over them and he entered the city of Constantinople. And that is when this structure, Hagia Sophia, fall into the hands of Ottoman Empire, and Sultan Mohammed, who was titled as Fateh, the conqueror, then converted the church to a mosque. And from 1453 up until 1934, this remained a mosque before being converted to a museum. Now there is furthermore history to this structure. Now this structure, Hagia Sophia, which we see today, though was built in 537 Christian era, which is after the death of Jesus Christ, according to the alleged crucifixion of Jesus, peace be upon him, AD 537 AD, this was made into a church, a large structure. There is history even before that, prior to that. If we go further back, where did all this start? Constantine I, who was one of the Christian leaders or the rulers of the Byzantine Empire of that time, he in the year 325 declared an order to build a church in that location where we have Hagia Sophia today. Now, when we have this structure there, in 325, when Constantine ordered, he ordered to build a church, Hagia Sophia, on the land where there was an existent pagan temple. So on the remnants or the existent pagan temple is what Constantine I wanted to build, and thus he ordered to make a church. His son in 360 AD is when Constantine II finally consecrated the church there. After that, between 360 to 537, this church from time to time, no less than 2 times at least, was burnt to the ground, to ashes, and then was rebuilt again, and there were certain amendments being made, and the restructuring was happening from time to time. So most recently in 1453, the Greek Orthodox Church is the one who was holding ground on it. Now this is in brief detail the historical dates and the timeline of Hagia Sophia up until 10th of July 2020. Now let's look at the religious perspective. Now what is happening is, because in 1453 the Ottoman Caliphate, the Muslim Sultan, the leader, the ruler of the time, Sultan Mohammed, he conquered the city Constantinople, and then he decided to convert the church, Hagia Sophia, into a mosque, and in the Turkish language it is called as Masjid Hagia Sophia. So now the question is being raised or is being discussed that how could a Muslim ruler convert an existent place of worship into another form, that is a mosque, to be a place of worship. Now from an Islamic perspective, what we are discussing now, we have discussed the historical perspective. Now let's look at the religious perspective. From an Islamic fiqh opinion, does it allow or permit somebody to convert a church into a mosque? Now in Islamic jurisprudence, right from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, from the verses of the Quran, from the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ, and up until to this day, there have been great scholars who have passed away, the 4 main schools of thought, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, may Allah's mercy be on all of them, and followed by many other great scholars up until our time. We have various statements and opinions of scholars in this subject, but we do not see any particular instance where it is declared as an obligation or as a fundamental teaching of Islam where it says that an existent structure cannot be converted into a mosque. This is something which is not clearly mentioned in the entire Islamic jurisprudence. So no scholar would be explicitly saying or have said that an existent structure, whether a church or a temple or a museum, cannot be converted into a mosque. There is no such ruling within the Islamic jurisprudence. Now, having said that, what people are discussing and are rightfully arguing about is, was it an appropriate decision to convert Hagia Sophia into a mosque while it was a church in place? Now, what happens here is 2 things that we need to look at. From a religious perspective, from an Islamic perspective, and from the law of conquest, what you call as the law of the conquest, so meaning prior to the First and the Second World War, there was a system of conquering other countries. Every country used to do that, and every empire used to do that pretty much. So what was happening in those days? So if we look at the medieval perspective here, or take the medieval aspect into consideration, any government, any empire, any king, any ruler who would have taken over another country by force, through war, through warfare, then the entire country that they have taken over, the conquered land, and all its property, all its resources would be at the mercy of the invading army or the ruler. So if somebody conquers a country, then everything in that country is theirs, is the property of the country or the ruler who has taken over the place. So this was the general understanding on the law of conquest that was followed by anyone and everyone. Now, what we need to see further is, from an Islamic perspective, is that the rule or how does it work? From an Islamic perspective as well, when somebody takes over an entire geographical location by war, by warfare or through force, Whatever the reason, right or wrong, we can discuss it at another time. But once a country or a city or a geography is taken over by force through warfare, then the entire resource, all the structures, and all those who are living in that become under the ownership or the rulership of the invading army. So that has been the law of conquest, and that has been the Islamic principle as well. Having said that, the Muslim scholars have been very careful and have been very cautious in continuously mentioning the what you call the merciful aspect of Islam. For example, when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he conquered Mecca, he immediately gave forgiveness to all the people of Mecca and the army of Mecca, which previously had murdered, oppressed, tortured and killed many of the Muslims who today became victorious over them. We see that Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, the second Khalifa, the second Caliph of Islam, when he conquered Jerusalem at that time, he was very merciful to all the people around in Jerusalem itself. He even made an agreement with the leading priest of the church there in Jerusalem, and gave many concessions to them, including one very notable thing: the Jews were not allowed to enter Jerusalem for no less than 5 centuries, until Umar ibn al-Khattab conquered the city of Jerusalem. And then he did not leave the city of Jerusalem until he invited the Jews to enter Jerusalem for the first time in 5 centuries. And only on the request of the Christian priests of Jerusalem, the Christian priests requested as a condition that they said, you may allow Jews to come in, but they should not be allowed to settle in Jerusalem. And that was the agreement finally enforced by the Muslim leadership of the time. Moving further, then when we come to Sultan Mohammed Fateh, as popularly titled, even when he took over Constantinople, he was very merciful to all the inhabitants of the city. He did not take over all the churches and convert them to mosque. He did not. He allowed the people to live, to do business, the Byzantine remnants, the Christian scholars, the Orthodox community, as well the Roman Catholics. He even was the mediator between Christian sects. He was requested by the Greek Orthodox priests of the time to have some sort of agreement between them and the other sects of Christianity. So Muslim leadership played a vital role in that, and the Muslim scholarship continuously reiterated the rulers to be very soft and merciful towards the army or towards the people who have lost the battle. Now, within the midst of all of this, what Sultan Mohammed Fateh did was, when he entered Constantinople and he conquered the entire city, then he did not, he continuously preserved all the other churches, which are still, till date, in 2020, can be seen that there are structures, there are Christian churches, which has remained as it is since the time of the conquer of Constantinople. Now, on top of that, what happened with Hagia Sophia is exactly what we are discussing now. With Hagia Sophia, now there are various theories in discussion. One theory says that Sultan Mohammed Fateh, he not only just came and entered into Constantinople, but when he reached the Hagia Sophia, the church, he was handed over the keys by the monks of the church. And there are stories and there are theories and there are documents that are claimed to be an agreement between Sultan Mehmed and the monks of the church, who gave him for a monetary value. He paid the monetary value and took the keys of the church. This is one opinion. The other is, as the conqueror of Constantinople, every structure belonged to the ruling government. So he had every right to enter into the church and convert it into mosque straight away. So the other theory says that he simply was the ruler of the place now, and the monks have very well understood and they knew the law of the conquest of that time, and they simply handed him over the keys of the church. Thus it became the church. It became a mosque. Third, the historians, they mention that when he took Hagia Sophia and converted it into mosque, if he wanted, he could have converted all the other churches of the Constantinople, but he refrained from doing such, showing the plurality of the Muslim leadership and showing the Islamic approach of preserving the places of worship in their original form and letting the Christians and the Jews and the other people to continue worshipping in their places of worship. So this was a sign, a statement of multiculturalism within the Islamic empire of that time. Now, coming to the last aspect. From the Islamic perspective, does that mean it was permissible to convert the church into the mosque or not? As I mentioned earlier, from a religious fiqh perspective, there is no ordinance, there is no jurisprudence, there is no fatwa which says that a church cannot be converted into a mosque, or which says that a temple cannot be converted into a mosque, or which says a museum cannot be converted into a mosque. An existing structure, whatever its previous usage was, in Islam, it does not prohibit the conversion to a mosque. Lastly now, what are the consequences in the 21st century of the conversion or the reversion of the museum, Hagia Sophia, into a mosque in 2020? Now, this we want to look at from a legal perspective. What has happened on 10th of July 2020 is and it is connected to what happened in 1934 in Turkey. The Parliament of Turkey, under the judiciary system of Turkey, which is still the same judiciary system and the same parliamentary system in Turkey, right from 1934 up until 2020. In 1934, the courts in Turkey declared that this Mosque Hagia Sophia, is now going to be having a bar, a condition on it, which is that no one should be allowed to pray in it. Rather, it becomes a museum as a structure. This law, this constitutional obligation, this rule, this order which was passed in 1934 was reverted in 2020. So on 10th of July 2020, it was not a church that was converted to a mosque. It was a museum which was previously used as a mosque for no less than 500 years. It was reverted back to a mosque. So all that has happened on the 10th of July 2020 is a museum which used to be a mosque has been reverted back to be a mosque. This is in brief, inshallah, what we have discussed so far. With the final point that I want to mention, there people are discussing what is the strategy here, what is going to happen. My point here is let's communicate, discuss, have a dialogue, explain to the people. This structure, Hagia Sophia, was a mosque for 500 years. Under the law of Turkey, in 1934, it was converted to be a museum. That law has been now reverted back and the structure has gone back to its original practice and the place of worship, which was a mosque. That is what has happened here. So if anybody feels hurt, and I do understand that the sentiments of many Christians across the world may have been hurt, but the reality and the ground reality and the fact of the matter is that we need to communicate with each other and understand each other. I believe that this is a matter of sovereignty for Turkey, and it is a legal matter within the jurisdiction of Turkey, and it is an internal affair of the country Turkey itself. So everybody, Muslims, Christians, and all the secular governments should be respecting the right of Turkish government to make an internal decision. If we can communicate this word through and have an understanding for each other, hopefully we will not have what you call a division or some sort of opposition to each other. I would like to conclude this by reminding that it is very important that we communicate with each other, we respect each other, and let our perspectives known to each other. Many may have disagreements from each other on this subject. It is important that we do not end up having a discord within the society and community, rather have a better understanding of each other's perspective. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alamin.